Yeah, that is the challenge between the hype of AI and the reality of what it can do. I share it all the time. Customer first, technology last, AI maybe, because in most cases, and a lot of cases out there, you could build exactly the same thing without AI at all, let alone agentic AI or some, toolbox.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Your Customer, Your Success. My guest today is Chris Hood. Chris is our first repeat guest on the show. And if you watched episode 10 this winter, you know the topic today is going to be AI, right? And specifically, we're going to talk today about agentic AI, what it is, what it isn't, and is this really going to be the next game changer? Chris is an AI realist and strategist driving human centered AI transformation and is the author of both Customer Transformation and this year's Infallible, a look at the AI hype, reality, and even the ideology of AI. Chris, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, great to be here, Gary.
Thanks so much for being here. And this is driving me crazy, Chris. I had to have you back on because I've tried to handle what the hell is agentic AI on my own, and I'm so thoroughly confused. I was reaching out to you to explain to me what the hell it is. So let's do a damn episode because people are throwing this around like crazy, and I just feel like maybe they're well-intentioned people and they think it's the next best greatest thing, but I feel like nobody knows what the hell they're talking about, right? And so I think what we're going to do today, since Chris has been on the show already, he's been a guest, we're going to change the format a little, right? We're not going to do chip shots. We've already done that. Go back to episode 10 if you want to see that. But we're going to start with Does It Hold Water? So I'm going to read some quotes to just kind of bring to you to life the craziness I see that just comes through my inbox, that comes out there on LinkedIn, and I'm thoroughly confused. So here we go. I'm going to read you two quotes for Does It Hold Water? You ready to kick off the show? All right. And I'm not going to tell you where they're from because we're not looking to make fun of anybody. We're trying to figure this out. Okay. All right. First quote. Agentic AI technology that can perform tasks and solve issues largely on its own will be able to handle complex requests like the booking of complex travel arrangements, shifting AI from reactive helper to proactive financial agent for shopping, payments, and investing. These developments are expected to shake up the economic foundations of finance, affecting billions in credit card companies and others. Pioneers willing to lead the way could see game-changing upside, while those who don't innovate will lose out. That's number one. Okay. Number two, AI agents will soon be mainstream, but unlocking their full potential requires more than tech alone. It demands strategic implementation that fuses traditional analytics and machine learning with agentic capabilities, along with enterprise-wide deployment and robust governance. With expert insights and independent research, unlock the blueprint to agentic AI now. How does that sound?
So I would say in both of those, about 95% of what they said is a bunch of junk, hyped up language. But there are elements in there that are relevant. And I think that we should dive into a little bit. Probably the best two words was agentic capabilities. Because if we really begin to dissect what agentic is, it is an action-based, task-oriented framework. And so when we say capabilities, then that's what it's doing. It's generating, levels of processes that we need to allow our AI to be able to facilitate. Now, all of the other stuff, like revolutionizing the way we do things, that's just all marketing hype.
Right. And so that's where I think the trouble lies, right? Because I don't think anybody knows what this stuff really is and isn't. And there's the marketing hype, and God bless some of these people. Maybe they think they know what they're talking about, but I don't think they do. And I think people are getting confused because of the term agent and agentic. They confuse it with a chatbot or an agent, and it's agentic AI. Now we'll talk about the definitions in a second, but is this really like marketing people talking about stuff they might not understand versus like what are the researchers really doing out there? Like there's people really looking into what is truly agentic AI, but that's kind of new, right?
Yeah, I agree here that probably, again, I'll use this 95%. It's a good number. 95% of the people out there talking about agentic AI believe that it means something to do with the agent. Now, indirectly, that might be true, but they basically, when they're talking about agentic, they're actually talking about agents doing things, right? And the problem is that the word agentic has agent as its root, and so I think it further confuses people. They see agent in the word, so they think that it must be all about agents. Now, the problem is, and the other question that you asked is, last year, the word agentic in terms of AI, agentic AI, was not even in existence. I mean, 2 years ago, no one was talking about agentic AI. And, some research papers started to come out about how do we kind of frame agents doing advanced level processes. And somebody used the word agentic and it kind of stuck. And no one can really point to where it came from, but it's one of these things that all of a sudden it just blossomed into this next level conversation. And because of that, because it's really, again, 2 years ago, it was not an area of AI academic research. And then on top of that, you've got marketing hype trying to over glorify AI and agents. And all of a sudden it's stuck. And so now we've got this term, agentic AI. And I think a lot of us have to try to better define what it is. And we can really only do that by trying to dissect the terminology and then trying to figure out within our existing AI framework, where does it sit?
Okay, yeah, exactly. So let's do just that. To define the term agentic for people, if you will, because you do it better than anybody.
So, agentic roughly relates into what we call agency. And so there's a lot of interpretations also around agency. We could think of agency as your typical, like, say, I own a marketing agency, I own a consulting agency. And within an agency, you are facilitating transactions between organizations. Agency also means the various types of tasks or actions that somebody takes. And it also often is referred to some level of autonomy. So I have agency to go off and do something. And then the third definition, and the one that I think people are gravitating towards, is it refers to an agent being able to do something. Now, where it gets confusing is that in that particular definition, it refers to the law, and it refers to something like an agent of the government that is facilitating some sort of legal definition. Um, However, you want to kind of frame this, you basically have some consistency. You have transactions between things. And so when we start to think about multi agents, there is agency between those multi agent systems. And if we think about it more purely, it is a task based or actions that it's going to facilitate. Then we're really close to what we think agentic AI is all about. But I think the other area that we often get confused in is people automatically associate agency with autonomy. And I have discussed regularly that, well, autonomy doesn't exist in artificial intelligence. And if autonomy doesn't exist, then should agentic exist? But if we say, well, look, autonomous AI is one area and agentic AI is another area, then we don't really need competing terms to define autonomy. We have autonomous AI. Let's leave that over there, which means agentic AI has to be about facilitation of actions. And I think within the definition, that is where we're aligned.
Yeah, and I think that's it. People are confusing the autonomy with automated, right?
Yeah.
Be- because autonomy doesn't exist. It doesn't exist, right? And that's what people don't understand. Even you can say, well, a self-driving car, that's not really autonomous, right? That's it's doing things on its own, but it's a preset goal shaped by humans, right? And it and even in the example of the travel arrangements, book me a trip to Italy with this time constraint and this dollar amount constraint and these hotel requirements, right? And then it'll go out and do it for you. Well, you prompted it, but it's not really autonomous. Am I missing the mark? Or
Yeah, no, that's exactly how I frame it. As long as there is a prompt involved with anything inside of AI, then it can't be autonomous because you have prompted what you want. And so, even in your example of book me something, and this is an example of where most people say agentic AI lives, is that, hey, I need a hotel room, I need to book a flight, I need hotel reservations, maybe dinner reservations, all within this framework, all within a certain budget. And it can go off and do that. Well, you have provided a prompt for what it needs to go off and do. And the fluidness of those actions can be perceived by the agent, but that's not autonomy. That has still been a prompt that you have given it. And in subtle language, which is all that AI is capable of, it is predicting what is the most logical sequence of that. So, for example, if you say, book me a flight during these dates for this budget, and then also find hotel, and well, the first thing it's going to do is go book you the flight, because why book a hotel if I haven't figured out what the flight is
right,
yet, right? So
right,
there is natural logic in that decision making tree. And so, again, as long as there is a prompt, you don't have autonomy. And in most systems, that automatically means it's automation.
right. And the other example, and when I talk to people, they say, "Oh, well, it's the next step in the evolution of AI. You're not going to have to prompt it every step of the way." Because right, now think about just the most simplest form. If we're using GPT to say, "Write me show notes for this podcast, write me promo clips for this podcast," right? You're going step by step by step. But they're saying this is where I think people come in and start confusing the chatbot's going to be the client someday, right? Which drives me crazy. But the point is, okay, your agent, your AI agent's going to talk to somebody else's AI agent. So, let's say it's Friday afternoon. I'm thinking about beer this afternoon for the long weekend. If I run a beverage distributorship and I'm low on Budweiser for the long weekend, and it recognizes my inventory, it's going to say, go out to the distributor, who's Chris, and look for how many cases of Budweiser at this price. And if you can't find them, right? So when it hits this level, go look at this price. And if Chris doesn't have it, go out to Fred, something like that. And the chat bots are going to be transacting. Is that what we're talking about?
Well, it's one example, right? But again, there's logic that you can put behind that that doesn't require AI at all. You can automate that sequence.
Right.
But let's look at the travel example again,
Yeah.
and say I have a business trip, and I simply tell my agent, book me, my, I've got a workshop for a client. Book me the event for that client. Well, I don't have to say airline, taxi, Uber, hotel, restaurant reservations, whatever. It can figure that out on its own, right? Like, oh, well, wait a second. Let me check the calendar. Let me check, all the records I currently have. Do I see a hotel room already booked for this particular event? No. Like, there's logic in there that we as humans already can kind of process. Well, yeah, agents can start to process that too. So I don't have to spell out every single step, but it doesn't mean that all of a sudden we're on some next level of agentic AI because it can do all of that without me prompting it. That's still all sitting in a processing or contextual or logic layer of the AI. Another way we can look at this in terms of logic is if I said, and I use this example a lot when I educate my students about artificial intelligence, is to say, uh, provide me in as minimal as possible directions for making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And again, in our heads as humans, we could quickly automatically interpret what that is. Get out bread, get out, peanut butter and jelly. There's some really funny videos on YouTube actually about software engineers and like kids going through this process. And I remember one of them is like, okay, put the knife into the peanut butter. And so the dad just drops the knife into the peanut butter. And the kid's like, no, no, that's not what I mean. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we take this to the next level and we say, there is no knife. Remove the knife from the equation. Can you still make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? Now, again, as humans, we can logically go through that process and begin to fill in, well, maybe I can use a spoon. Like I said, I've done this with students and they said, well, I'll use my finger.
Yeah.
I'll use a stick, right? They come up with any number of things to make that peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And
That's
yet
how my 8-year-old will do it.
Yeah, AI is going to do the exact same thing. It's going to select the tool that is available to it to perform the action that it needs to perform. And ultimately, that's what we're talking about. That's what agentic AI is. If I was to overly simplify this whole conversation, agentic AI is a toolbox of available tools for AI to select from to perform a task.
And that's fine. And it might be useful. I don't see the game changer in it.
Right. As of right now, it's not, because in most cases, you can use existing automation tools to perform the exact same stuff. You and I have talked about it. You could argue that agentic AI or even baseline agents were in existence back in Excel using advanced macros, because all you're doing is telling it what you want it to do and it goes off and does it, right? It's automation. And this is, again, where the challenge between automation and autonomy comes in, because you have this feeling that, oh, it must be going off and doing all of these things on its own. So it must be highly advanced and intelligent, but it's not. It's coming up with logic and it's performing actions within a sequence. It's all probability. There's no difference from what we're talking about as in terms of agentic AI and your ChatGPT or LLMs. LLMs are all based on probability. What is the next word? And all agentic AI today is what is the next action? And there is no real, magic to this. And again, I think this is where people are getting confused, is because they're trying to define it as some advanced level intelligence. And really all it's doing is it's building out a probability of a set of actions and which action should I do in which sequence. And maybe it's, A, B, and C, but the next time maybe it's B, A, and C. And a lot of that decision and probability is coming from the prompt that you provided.
Right. And that's just it. I feel like everybody is billing this as this next level capability and level of intelligence, and it's not. It seems like, okay, it might be nice. It's a little bit of an advance to the basically having to prompt every step of the way. Book a hotel, now book a car, now book a flight or whatever in whatever order. And it's just, maybe it'll do, okay, that's fine. It might be slightly useful, but to me, it's the automation. And like we've talked about before, you said on the first episode, we'll talk about putting the client first and all that stuff, but think about the technology last, and the technology might already exist. Because like we talked about before, I'm in investments and investment management, and there's been quantitative trading for forever. It seems like 20, 30 years. There's quantitative portfolio management. Okay, that's how a lot of the indexes are managed. There isn't a portfolio manager to go and say, "Oh, I'm going to analyze Apple, and Apple's undervalued. I'm going to buy it." No, it's all quantitative for a lot of these large index funds. And there's a portfolio manager at the end of the day, but he's verifying the computer quote unquote output, right? So we have automation. There's lots of fancy technology out there, and I'm just scratching my head trying to figure out where this is going and where the use cases are. That's really going to be a game changer in everyday lives of employees and God, I don't know even about putting this in front of customers, right?
Yeah, that is the challenge between the hype of AI and the reality of what it can do. And like you said, I share it all the time. Customer first, technology last, AI maybe, because in most cases, and a lot of cases out there, you could build exactly the same thing without AI at all, let alone agentic AI or some, toolbox. I think where it starts to get more interesting is when you can embed the intelligence into the tools itself. So when I say agentic AI is basically a toolbox, it's a set of available actions that the AI can pull from to achieve. Well, if those tools become smarter, then that becomes more interesting. So think about a typical toolbox like a hammer,
Mhm.
and again, against the cliche of hype, I say I've got a hammer powered by AI. Well, now that tool is become a little bit more powerful, right? So you might use something like summarize a document. The tool is summarize, but AI is going to be able to go in and summarize that document and return it maybe in different formats, sort of like advanced level orchestration built into the tools themselves. Now that gets a little bit more interesting. And it helps us better define what agentic AI is. But again, what use cases those are and where that will take us, I think, is heavily dependent upon how we evolve technology moving forward. So we'll use self driving cars again as a great example where, they're not autonomous. We've already established there's no autonomy in AI. And so an autonomous vehicle doesn't exist. It's a self driving car that has a closed network, a closed system of functions that it's able to do. It has a prompt. The driver gets into the car, it tells it where to go, and then it can drive. It's got a set of established criteria and governance inside of the vehicle. So, like, I can't turn right when it's a red light, or I can't turn left or go through a stop sign and things like that. And so it's highly regulated system, but there's still a prompt involved. And again, it's mostly all internalized. The system, the car itself is self contained. There's no agentic AI within a car. But now, if we start to think about advanced levels, like, I've used this example where the car is out of energy, fuel, battery, gas, whatever, and it needs to self sustain itself, right? Could the car theoretically drive to the gas station on its own, use a credit card within its system to Bluetooth link to a pump? So there's no physical need for somebody to be there. We now have, let's say, charging systems rooted into the ground, into the driveway, so I don't actually have to plug in. So sort of like wireless charging of our mobile phones, but with
Mhm.
cars. And the agentic AI gets to the gas station, has a list of tools that it can then connect to and choose from so that it can charge, it can, do whatever else it needs to do. Well, that is a next level case. That starts to get into levels of autonomy. But there's still a prompting system in there, and there's still a toolbox of actions that it can access or can't access. And that's still the agentic AI. And we're still 10 years away from that type of activity.
Right. Because that's pretty cool stuff. And I get it, but I'm just my point is where the hell are we now? And I don't think we're anywhere now, right? I mean, do you know of any use cases now that's truly agentic AI or anything that's coming out that's agentic AI that's like legit now?
No, there's stuff that is out there that people call agentic AI to sound like they're advanced, but it's not truly agentic. Unless we argue that, again, agentic AI is simply nothing more than a toolbox of actions, and it's sitting in sort of an integrations or tooling layer of the system. And an agent, like a booking agent, can go and see what available actions there are, select the most appropriate action, and then go and facilitate that action or task with the tool that's within the system. And yeah, there are systems that are doing that. Could we call it agentic? Yeah, I mean, loosely, we could say that because, again, because it's a toolbox and because there's actions and because it can select those actions, that's agentic. But, in terms of next level or high level, yeah, I could still do that through automation.
Right. And so that's where I'm kind of going. Like right now, it doesn't seem like much more than another way to automate things, and we do have that. So I mean, in plenty of instances. One more concrete example, maybe to kind of really bring this home. What about like depositing a check through mobile, like a mobile app? Is there an agentic layer in that?
No. And this is a good example of the difference between, we'll say, automation, uh, agents, and then agentic. Like if we were to kind of look at this as a maturity level, automation being the most foundational. If I go into the bank and I deposit my check, I go up to an agent, I
Hmm.
hand them the check, I sign it, I have a deposit form, and the agent then facilitates a set of actions to get my check into my account. And we translate that now into a mobile device. And I can do the same thing. I can take a picture of my check, and it has a set of tasks that it knows it needs to execute in order to get that check into my account. What we see happening in our phone through a mobile photo check deposit is really no different than what we do if we go to an agent at a teller and have that transaction happen. And in both of these scenarios, though, there is a defined set of actions that it must do, and it facilitates those defined set of actions in a sequence. It's not going out and doing step 4 before it finishes step 2 because it can't. The agent
Right.
that you walk into at a bank and do it in person is doing it as well. They might be able to do a couple of things in parallel, right? But
Right.
they're still going through a sequence of steps. And when we talk about autonomy and when we talk about agentic AI, we're suggesting that there are sets of actions or tools that are available outside of, in this case, depositing a check. So, for example, I'm depositing a check and then I want to check the balance of my account. That theoretically is a different transaction. That's also why when you go into a teller, they're like, let's finish the deposit and then we can provide you with,
Right.
even if you go to an ATM and you deposit money or you extract money, it has a prompt that comes up afterwards and it says, would you like to get a receipt with your balance on it? And you can say yes or no. That's
Hmm.
because that's another transaction.
Hmm.
But if we take this to another advanced level, right? And I'm just going to go to the extreme to paint the picture. The agent at the bank, as well as my mobile banking app, cannot also order me a pizza. I'm not going into the agent and depositing my check at the bank and then saying, "Hey, while we're here, could you do me a favor and order me Domino's and have it delivered to my house?" And this is where we get into this concept of multi-system, multi-agent, or agentic AI, because within an organization, I might have a I might have a toolbox with a set list of actions that I only want to make available for my agents. I'm not going outside of that. Just like the self-driving car. The self-driving car cannot decide to, hey, let's watch a movie. Well, maybe it could because it has a screen and right.
Maybe.
But yeah, so when you start to think about it in that scenario, the set of actions within the toolbox outside of its normal capabilities presents new opportunities for that agentic layer.
So, and that's, I mean, I picked a simple example like that because everybody does that these days, right? And no, I don't think anybody in the right mind would say, hey, that's agentic AI, but it's a simple process where there's multiple steps in there. And that's what everybody's saying. Well, this agentic AI, it's multiple steps and da, 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 da. And right now, no, like future state, look, that's great that the car can go fill itself up with, well, it's not gas anymore to go charge itself. Um, which I think is actually even more interesting that it could do it without, plugging in, but that's not what we're talking about. That's more impressive. So, what do you think is like the maturation outlook here? Like, I mean, it's coming. It's much more clear to me now that I've talked to you a couple of times that yeah, maybe there's stuff coming. We're not there yet, and this really is direct parallel to what we're talking about this winter. That the hype is way out ahead of the curve on this,
Yeah.
so we're out over our skis. So, do you have any idea what this looks like over the next year or so? And is there anything that might be coming out? Because the game changingness of it is just mind-boggling. Like that quote, like it's going to shake the foundations of finance. What? It is? How? Like,
Yeah, so the way I look at it is that everything today, no matter how advanced you think it is all automation. We
mhm,
talked about predictive. I mean, an LLM, ChatGPT is all predictive modeling, and all levels of AI today, in terms of how they automate sequences, is also levels of prediction. Right? That's all it is. Let's like kind of get through the hype and call it what it is. I've got a sequence that I have to go, and you could say, can facilitate this thing in whatever sequence you want, but there's still a logical flow that has to happen, right? I can't book a hotel room before I book my flight because I have to know when I'm going to be able to arrive, right? That's a
mhm,
logical sequence. We see that in banking. We see that in automotives. We see that in military. It does not matter. You pick any scenario, and it's ultimately all prediction based on levels of governance that defines what it can do and what it can't do. And so, if we think about then where we're at and what is next, I would argue that we have to update the technologies. Like, we're ahead of where the technology is in terms of things like processes and access, before we can fully embrace what we are calling agentic AI today. And so maybe one way you could look at this is, there's been a lot of talk about wearable agents, right? Like a wearable device. So think Star Trek with
the
the
glasses.
telecommunication, beam me up, Scotty, right? That device that we wear becomes a personal type of agent that understands my preferences. It has all my data and my history, my privacy requirements. Um, it understands my preferences in food and things like that. So now we start to think ahead, and we say, okay, now book me a trip. Well, now I can book you a trip because I know what kind of food you like. So what restaurant to go to. I can call ahead, or plan ahead and say, look, I'm a vegetarian, so make sure that the vegetarian menu is available.
Mhm,
So there's all of these kind of personalizations, hyper personalizations that we can get into. And because it's my personal, I know your film preferences, the flavor of ice cream that you like, your dietary restrictions, your current account
mhm,
balances, so I know what your budget is. It has all of that information. So as opposed to needing to necessarily go off and access all of these different systems, our personal AI, entity will already have all of that information, which, then you could argue, well, I don't need agentic then, because then it already knows everything about me. But the point of this is, we've got to get to another level of technology connection before I think agentic AI fully is able to accomplish what we think it can accomplish.
yeah. I mean, yeah. Okay. So I think it's a lot clearer to me, and I just think right now I think this, to sum this up, it's don't hold your breath right now. we're not looking at anything that's coming out next week, but it seems like it from this hype. And there's more to follow. So let's try to sum it up a little bit. We're gonna do a little bit of a lightning round, if you don't mind, instead of chip shots. You ready?
Yep.
Can you define agent, agentic, and autonomy in 6 words each?
In 6 words each. Well, agent is a thing that does something. That's
Right.
pretty much the
Right.
best way I can explain that.
Mm-hmm.
Agentic is a is agentic is the thing that the agent does, like the action that it does.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a toolbox of actions that the agent can do. Autonomy is the ability for an agent to make decisions on its own without a prompt. That's probably more than 6 words, but
But
close enough.
yeah, but it can't do that.
But no system can do that today.
And thank God for that, because that's, like I've told you before, that's Ultron.
Yeah.
We don't need Ultron. So, all right, name one job agentic AI improves today, and what it should not touch yet.
Well, I'll go the what it should not touch. I've always said that you should not have AI touching anything that a human should be doing. So this is an area of massive debate. Like if you've got a customer, AI can't facilitate empathy. It can't have a personal conversation, nor should you let it. If you're dealing with your customers, you shouldn't be having AI write your emails and automating them. But again, people are doing that, right? So that's an area where I'm still a firm believer that there are human things that humans should do and AI things that AI should do, and balance that. And then the first one was something Agentic should be doing or can be doing, is doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think in terms of really where agentic AI is living today in its truest form is in existing tools like MCP or agent to agent protocols, agentic API protocols. Like that area is they're all task based systems to help further the agent to be able to figure out what it can do.
Yeah. All right. So we're getting there, right? But there's nothing earth shattering yet. So we're going to wrap it up with one more quote. So it's almost like we're going to end with does it hold water? Because I think this sums it up nicely. And I've read this quote before on a solo episode. This is Gartner from about a month or so ago. And Gartner says thousands of companies are slapping the agentic label on tools that are basically rules-based automation, chatbots, or glorified AI assistants. This is like calling a microwave oven an oven, right? It cooks, but it's just not the same. And a lot of these projects, and I don't have the rest of the quote here, 40% of them I think they expect to be canceled, agentic AI projects by 2027, because it lacks kind of the structure, the costs, and the know-how to get it done. And basically that's summing up what we've just said here, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, agentic AI is a hyped term and didn't even exist 2 years ago. And to think that people are investing in it shows that either the hype is working or that they just are not familiar enough, and they're riding the bandwagon. And so that's the areas that this conversation and what I'm trying to achieve is to better establish exactly what it is and what it isn't. And so an AI agent is not agentic AI, and agentic AI is agency of actions. And as long as we kind of move in that path forward, we should be good.
We should be good. Right. And that's what I wanted to clarify here, because I put that quote at the end because I think that makes a whole lot more sense now. Like I was reading it and I was trying to work through it and I worked through it on my own. But if you've now listened to that episode and then you rethink about that article and that quote, I think it makes a lot more sense. And that was our goal here today. So I think we've achieved the goal, my man. What about
Awesome.
you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mission
I think
accomplished.
we nailed it.
All right. Well, I can't thank you enough, Chris, for coming on the show again, because this one's been driving me absolutely crazy. And if I see one more overhyped like promo come through the inbox or LinkedIn, and I want to be nice out there, and I don't want to say anything, but I just can't anymore with this stuff. So I hope this clarifies things for people. That was our goal here today. Get a little bit of logic and reason to cut through the hype and set your expectations rationally. So when you're reading things, you can understand what it is a little bit better. And that was the lesson from the first episode, which is, you got to arm yourself with knowledge to understand what's really happening and what's not, so that you can understand what AI can do and what it can't do. And only from that place can you make better informed decisions, right? All right. So thank you, folks, so much for watching Your Customer, Your Success. We will be back with more CX experts, customer success people, and maybe even a solo episode again soon. That's all for now. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Chris. Have a great weekend, folks.
That's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We hope you found something insightful that will enhance your experiences and drive your success. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a review and share your thoughts to help us improve the show. Don't forget to head on over to marracxhub.com for more ways to connect with me and learn more about experience management. Until next time, I'm Gary Marra, working hard for your customer and your success.